Hi, good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's event in conversation with the Commissioner of Charities and Charity Council 2026, supporting charities at every stage. My name is Amanda Ho from MVPC, and it is my absolute pleasure to be your MC for today. We're delighted to have many of you here with us physically at the Grand Capiton Waterfront Hotel, as well as our participants joining us virtually via Zoom. Today's event is brought to you by the Office of the Commissioner of Charities, COC in short, the Charity Council, the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center, MVPC, and Pro Bono SG. Before we dive into the program, here are a few housekeeping matters. Firstly, for Q&A, we'll be using Pigeonhole Live for our Q&A session later. You can submit your questions at any time or upvote questions you'd like to see addressed. For those of us here in person, please scan the QR code shown on the screen with your smart device. Alternatively, you can launch your preferred internet browser and enter www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar. Let me repeat that. It's www.pigeonhole.at. When prompted, please key in our event passcode, capital letter INCONVO 2026, as shown on the slide. For our audience on Zoom, you can click on the link shared in the chat function to launch Pigeonhole Live on your device. If you're viewing this webinar on your desktop or laptop, you should receive an invitation to launch Pigeonhole. Please note that today's discussion are for informational purposes and do not substitute professional legal advice. We have an insightful morning ahead, featuring addresses from our leaders, Commissioner and Charity Council Chairperson, and a strategic roadmap update, followed by a panel discussion. With housekeeping matters out of the way, let's get started with today's program. Without further ado, let's invite Mr. Desmond Chin, Commissioner of Charities, to deliver his opening address. Commissioner, please.
Board members, charity leaders, partners, and friends of the sector. I'm told that there are 400 plus of you here in person and about 600 online that's present today. May I wish all of you a very good morning. I'm very pleased to be here with all of you and together with the chairman of the Charity Council, Theresa, and some of other charity members, council members, they are also here with us today. So good morning to all of you, and it's very nice to see all of you. There's a very familiar looking fellow on the screen. The hair color is not quite the same though. Now first, I would like to really recognize and appreciate the important work that each of you do every day, quietly to support communities across Singapore. Whether you serve the elderly or the persons with disabilities, vulnerable families, youth at risk, or advanced causes in education, health, environment, animal welfare, sports, or the arts. Your contributions matter deeply to all of us. At the COC's office, my team and I see our role through the lenses of regulation, or rather our role is not just seen through the lenses of regulation and compliance, but at its core, our purpose is quite simple: to help build a trusted and well-governed charity sector, and through that, an effective sector that delivers meaningful impact for our society. I'd just like to take a quick pause to recognize the meaningful strides that the sector has made together. Last year, together with our many trading partners and the many collaborating organizations that we have worked closely with the COC's office, we have created many learning opportunities for the sector. Now, collectively, we have reached out to about 500 charities, of which 50 of them are new charities joining us for the first time. I really do hope that we have more and more of the new charities stepping up to utilize and to attend these training sessions. So I would like to encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities, as continuous learning and growth are what will keep you, your team, and your charity strong, relevant, and impactful. Now this morning, I just like to talk on three key themes. First, strengthening trust and governance. Number two, I'd like to talk about enabling sustainability and resilience. And third, how we can work together to prepare for the future. Now, firstly, on trust. Trust really is the foundation of the charity sector. In Singapore, public confidence in charities fortunately continues to remain high, but this is something that we must never ever take for granted because trust is hard-earned and can be easily lost. The Charity Act in Singapore provides the framework for accountability and for transparency. But governance is not just about complying with rules. It is really about good stewardship. It is about doing right by our beneficiaries, by our donors, and by the wider public. They expect this of you, which is to do right, and fortunately or unfortunately, they expect the COC to make sure that we do just that. Now, second, we also recognize that for many charities, especially the smaller ones, compliance can feel complex, it can feel resource intensive. Now, we hear your concerns, and so that's why we're committed to providing clearer guidance and more simplified processes. We're committed to improving our communication so that expectations are easier to understand and taking a proportionate approach to enforcement. Now, our aim is not to penalize honest mistakes, but our aim is to address serious lapses and misconduct that undermine public trust. Allow me to share two key concerns I have. We have an average of about 80 complaints each year for the last 3 years. The two most common complaints that we receive at the COC's office are disputes between members and poor governance. Now, disputes and personality differences tend to tear charities apart. They will derail the good work that the charities do. We'll find very often that the volunteers get dragged into the fray, then they have to take sides, the warring camps start to form, battle lines are drawn, fierce and rude accusations are made and hurled at each other. And then finally, they take each other to court, wasting precious charity dollars. We've seen many cases like these in these complaints over the few years. We have seen this happen across all sectors, including the religious organizations, which ironically embody principles of harmony and reconciliation. Now, this shows that no sector is immune to such divisive behavior, but we really need to regulate ourselves better in managing these unnecessary disputes and differences. The second key area of complaints that we receive is poor governance amongst some of the charities. Now, poor governance endangers a charity because it creates a fertile ground for mismanagement and for misconduct to take place. You give opportunities for people who want to do wrong. So, for example, without proper controls and internal processes, we have seen lucrative contracts being handed to family members and friends without tenders being called. We have seen monies and valuables gone missing, unaccounted for, because there are poor internal controls. Now, these are bad. If we want to run a charity, then surely we must know what is required of us. Many of our interviews with these erring parties, they tell us, we do not know. But ignorance cannot be the reason for gross neglect. Now, fortunately, all these errant cases and bad actors that I've mentioned make up a small number of our charities. The majority of you are fine, but they must not let these small numbers undermine the integrity of the charity sector, and such behavior cannot be tolerated. They must be taken to task firmly. Therefore, we are now reviewing our Charity Act to enhance some of our regulatory powers and to strengthen the enforcement efforts to deal with such cases. Let me give you two simple examples. We are exploring compulsory mediation to try and resolve conflicts. If we can keep all our tempers in check, learn not to take offense too easily, be watchful about the way we talk and utter our words, and then the number of disputes that I see, I'm quite sure will be half. But unfortunately, we don't do that, right? We're not very regulated. And so charities and individuals drag each other to court to resolve their disputes. But I think that before we do that, perhaps we can try to resolve our differences through mediation. And I would really like to see that happen first, because it will save charity dollars, it will save individuals from reputational damage, which I'm quite sure is not fun, and you may not want to inflict that on yourselves. So we will try and see whether we can push the mediation frontier a little bit more. The second area that we are looking at, the Charity Act, are for those who remain recalcitrant despite reminders to comply with the mandatory annual submissions. They will face some penalties. Now, please be rest assured, much of the sector is fine, and your efforts are bearing fruit. Let me just share some numbers with you so you understand. Our overall annual submission compliance rate now stands at 86%, with IPCs achieving almost 100%. So there are one or two. Compliance and non-IPC charity maintenance rates are between 78 to 83. So the target groups really are the non-IPCs. Fortunately, the numbers are not too large. So this demonstrates that most of our sector is committed to upholding high standards and working collaboratively with us to strengthen their practices that build public trust. Now, for you, the majority of you, there's nothing to worry about. It is for the minority that we would like them to pull up their socks. I do not wish for the hard work and for the hard work that you do to be undone by small numbers of individuals or groups with ill intent. Now, on governance. But although I said we have done well in governance, as with all things in Singapore, good can always be better. It reminds me of an incident that happened to me once. Back in my old job, and I had only one other job other than this, in the prisons, I sent a team to Norway to study their recidivism rate of their prisons. And you know, Scandinavian prisons has the lowest recidivism rates in the world. So Norway's recidivism rate over 2 years is 20%. So 1 in 5 comes back within 2 years. At that time, Singapore's recidivism rate was much higher. The team came back, did a presentation, and then we realized that the Norwegians didn't include drug taking or drug offenses as part of their recidivism. So to compare like for like, I took out our drug offenders, and lo and behold, Singapore's recidivism rate was 17%. So I waited with glee for my meeting with my PERMSEC, and I proudly told him, Norwegian recidivism rate 20%, Singapore 17%. And then he looked at me sneeringly and he said, why is it not single digit? Yeah. So what's the point of the story? The point of the story is that good can always be better. I'd like to encourage all boards and the management team to strengthen your internal controls. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's important. We need to invest in our governance capabilities, and we need to foster a culture of accountability. I would also like to encourage all board members and key management team, therefore, to sign up for the Govern Well Excellence in Charity Leadership courses. I think most of you, or some of you may know that we have developed it together with 5 training partners, and the pilot program covers 4 very important areas. Some charities have asked me if I had to prioritize, what would be the areas I'll look at? So these are the 4 modules that you should look at. Board excellence, or rather board essentials, ethics, financial stewardship, and impact measurement. These are important for your future. This course, or these courses, are heavily subsidized, so cost should not be a barrier. So to date, there are 857 participants that have signed up. Now, this is an encouraging start. However, this is only about 3.5% of the estimated 24,000 board members and key management staff that we have in our charity sector. Why 24,000? Is because there are 2,400 of you. I take 10 per charity, that makes it 24,000. So only 3.5% have signed up. Now, my wish, my early Christmas wish, is for every board member and every key management team to please sign up and attend this meeting. I know you guys are very busy, right? From the door to here, I met about 5 of you. You all told me you're very busy, and I believe you, right? But please do sign up. I assure you that you will end up better equipped for your role, better able to guide your boards and your management team, and you have to serve your beneficiaries in your communities if you do attend. So please take time to attend. We need to look at good governance as not a cost. It is an investment in our charities' long-term growth, our long-term development, and our credibility, and the impact that you make on our beneficiaries and the society. I'd like then to talk about second issue on sustainability and resilience. The operating environment for charities is indeed becoming very, very challenging. It's been so for a while. The ongoing wars have not made it any easier. You are facing rising costs, tighter manpower, and increasing competition for donations. At the same time, community needs are becoming more complex and growing. So I think in this environment, the sustainability of the charity is key. We have been encouraging charities to think beyond short-term fundraising and to consider at least three things. One, diversify your income streams. And secondly, to build your reserves prudently. And three, I know it's difficult, but to explore partnerships with corporates and other organizations. Building resilience requires both strategic planning and adaptability. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. That's why boards need to look at it, and boards' responsibility is to consider how you can move your charity forward, not just for today, but for tomorrow as well. So we have put in place tools to help you develop robust contingency plans and to work towards maintaining financial reserves that are more sustainable. The pandemic, if anything, has taught us that charities with diversified funding sources, with flexible service delivery methods, and with strong digital capabilities, all emerge stronger. So please consider leveraging on these resources and the extensive partner networks that we have to build a mutual support system that will enhance your charity's capacity to respond to unexpected circumstances. I'd just like to touch briefly on fundraising. We also understand and recognize the growing importance of digital fundraising. It is here. It's not going to go away. Online platforms and social media have now opened up new opportunities, but at the same time, they have also raised questions about accountability and transparency. Now, we will continue to provide guidance to ensure that fundraising practices remain responsible, but we need all of you to be alert at the same time. Let me give you an example. Recently, it came to our attention that some third-party fundraisers are charging charities commission rates of up to 30% for fundraising services. So in consultation with Charity Council, we have decided we better send out an EDM on best practices when engaging third-party fundraisers, which you should have received by now, because we sent it to all the board as well as the CEOs. Now, this guidance emphasizes that boards and management need to exercise sound judgment to avoid the high commission or opportunistic arrangements that some of these fundraisers that will offer you, because this will run contrary to the spirit of responsible fundraising. Now, true stewardship goes beyond just compliance. Your role as stewards also requires reasonableness, judgment, responsibility, and transparency in all our fundraising decisions. Now, let me now touch very briefly on our manpower. I understand that beyond fundraising, manpower remains a critical challenge. And many charities rely heavily on volunteers, yet attracting and retaining volunteers, especially the younger ones, can be a challenge. It's not easy. We need to start to rethink our volunteer engagement models, provide meaningful and flexible opportunities, and invest in training and development for both staff and volunteers. Earlier this month, I was driving my daughter to work. She's 28 years old and she works in the health sector. So I asked her, in preparing for this address, I asked her, what do you and your friends look for in your work lives? And then she said, purpose. And I asked, and she replied, good bosses and good colleagues. And then I asked her, any more? She kept quiet. So I said, isn't pay important? And she said, of course. But it is the first two that are more important. And the first two are purpose, meaning, good bosses, colleagues, which means work culture. I believe this applies not just in the health sector where she's working, but I believe it applies to all of us in the charity sector, that we need to understand this for both our staff and our volunteers. Now, preparing the future together. Digital transformation is now no longer optional. From donor engagement to service delivery, technology can help charities to do more with less. We've heard this 1,000 times. So last year, I visited the Lions Home for Elders to see how they have embraced technology to enhance their services and their care delivery. They have leveraged on artificial intelligence through AI-enabled social robots to further enhance their social engagement and emotional well-being for residents living with dementia. I also saw that through automation, they have deployed smart technologies to create virtual and immersive solutions to enhance their care delivery. These integrated technologies enable Lions Home to deliver a person-centered model of care and future-ready aged care facility. So I looked around. Of course, there were still staff present, but I noticed that the technology had helped to free up the staff from the mundane jobs so that the staff could then attend, especially to those residents who needed more attention. I could see very clearly how technology has helped this Lions Home do much more and much better. So I hope that this will help us to start to think of how we can deploy technology, tools, AI in a more effective manner for each of our charities so that we can do more with less. On collaboration, we know that it will become increasingly important. No organization can meet all its needs alone. The COC's office is a clear example. I have only 20 staff, I think including myself. There's only 20 of us. There is no way we can come up with training, with tools, kits, with codes, guides on our own, because I have 80 complaints every year. So we have wonderful partners that we work with, whether it's ISCA, SID, Pro Bono, right? CSIS, and many law firms, KPMG, accounting firms like KPMG, Wong Partnership, and so on and so forth. So over the years, they have stepped up, they have volunteered their time, resources, pro bono, and helped develop all these resources that you will see on the slides later. Use them because they are what's needed. And I understand full well that collaboration is needed in such instances. I know many charities are anxious when it comes to collaboration, but as we said, you start small, you look for a common purpose, you make expectations clear, roles are clear, and then you try it out. You will find that it works, then you can go on to a larger collaborative effort than if you don't try out at all. It's difficult to live on your own on this island nowadays. You need to partner people. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about was on feedback, and this is important, right? As a regulator, we want to continue to listen carefully to what the charity sector has to say. Policies that are developed must remain relevant and must remain responsive to the realities on the ground. Now, so for the revised code in 2022, 134 of you stepped forward to give us the feedback. We made some changes to it, and I have heard good feedback from the charities as a whole. Now, similarly, we have done so for the pillar framework, which was led by SUSS and co-developed with the Charity Council. It's grounded in applied research. The team had conducted many interviews with charities, award judges, regulators, and sector stakeholders. 250, at least 10% of the charities participated. Your inputs and insights have been invaluable, and we have now shaped the framework that I hope will be practical and relevant to all your needs. Now, most importantly, we recognize that we have sent out a survey on a Charity Capabilities Fund to gather feedback on how we can better support our charities better. Now, the CCF has been instrumental in strengthening our charities. Over the years, it has helped all our charities enhance your governance capabilities, it has helped build digital capabilities, assess consultancy services, and so forth. As we approach the end of the current funding period, which will end in March next year, 2027, we would seek your feedback because your feedback will be crucial in helping us to shape the next tranche of funding that we're looking for. If you have not responded to the survey, may I now take this opportunity, especially those online as well, to encourage you to do so, because your feedback will help us to demonstrate to the Ministry of Finance the continued value and impact that the CCF fund has on the sector. It will also help us to ensure that the next tranche will meet your evolving needs effectively. Theresa will speak a little bit more of that, and you understand why we need your help in shaping this next tranche. Now, lastly, we'll be conducting sector engagement sessions with the Charity Council, with the sector administrators and partners over the next 3 years. In other words, we'll be visiting all of you. Yeah, so please don't run away. The reason for the visit is so that we can hear you, we can share, we can dialogue with you, we can share what is coming, and we can take whatever feedback you might have. So the first visit starts with the social and welfare sector on the 3rd of June. So please join us as these conversations ensure that the support will remain relevant and the support, hopefully, will be timely as well. So let me conclude with this thought. At its heart, the charity sector is really about people, those who give, those who serve, and those who are served. Regulation plays an important role, but it is trust, and it is compassion, and it's commitment that truly define what our sector is about. So my team and I are committed to partnering you on this journey, to uphold trust, to strengthen governance, and to enable innovation and impact. Together, the COC's office, and more importantly, together with you, we can help to build a charity sector that not only remains well-regulated, is vibrant, is resilient, and is forward-looking. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to our dialogue later this morning.
Thank you, Commissioner, for sharing those insights on the evolving landscape and how we can better support charities. Next, we are privileged to have Ms. Theresa Goh, Chairperson of the Charity Council, with us. She'll be sharing key milestones and the roadmap for the Council's future initiatives. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Theresa Goh, Chairperson of the Charity Council, for a presentation. Charity Council wrap-up and signposts for the current term. Ms. Goh, please.
It's really bright down there. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very big welcome to have a conversation with myself and Desmond today after my presentation. The reason why I'm here and not some other guest speakers is because my term has just been renewed for the next 3 years. Thank you. And Commissioner and I, we both agreed that it's a good time for me to share the wrap-up and the good work done by the 9th Charity Council, and also to share with you the plans that the 10th Charity Council would be doing together with you. And of course, none of this would have been possible with the commitment of yourself, our partners, as well as the ladies from the charity unit, right? They are the ones, the 4 ladies, Catherine, Kaitia, Li Yan, and Crystal, right? You have really been supporting us very well. And of course, there's Christy and Chen Ming, who has moved on to bigger roles to stretch the talents. Now, these 4 ladies, after they have seen our plan for the next 3 years, I'm surprised they have not tear their hair or, pull out their teeth. Yeah, but so it's a great appreciation because they are our support. and they are the bridge between us and our partners. Now, as I think about the charity sector and how uncertain times are, I mean, nobody has to tell you about what's happening in the Middle East, and all this will have an effect. There is a cascading effect to all the sectors, and we, the charity sector, will not be spared, right? If things get worse, we really do have to work together. And I was thinking about how to send this message across, without sounding too pessimistic or too optimistic. And the thought came to my mind about the big bad wolf and the 3 little pigs, and the type of houses that they build, right? One pig built a house of straw, another one a house of stick, and the last one, the house of bricks. So then my question to you is, there are 2,400 charities. All of you are leaders of your charity. What kind of house have you built? A house of straw, which is easy to put together, but reactive and very easily shaken by external shifts. And wow, what kind of external shifts do we have from now onwards, right? Or is yours a house of stick? Yes, more flexible, maybe better than straw, but still lacks the structural integrity for the long haul. What about the house of bricks, built with intention, shared resources, and a focus on sustainability? I do not want you to put up your hand as to what kind of a house is yours, yes, but I do like you to reflect deeply on your charity and how it is going to sustain, despite the external forces, for the longest time ever, because all the beneficiaries need you to be around. Okay? Now, with that in mind, I wanted to share 3 years ago when I took over as chair, and together with my council, what was the thought process? We really did apply the theory of change. We even did a SWOT analysis. And the theory of change says the long-term impact, and as Commissioner has mentioned, is a well-governed, thriving charity sector with strong support from the public. Yes, many of you are receiving grants from the government, we know that, but the biggest pie you can ever get is to add the public into your sustainability strategy, right? So that's a long-term impact. Now the preconditions, we came up with 4 preconditions, which is charities that are well-governed, charities that minimally conform, and Commissioner has mentioned, there are a few that are still not conforming, right? Then the strategy would be strong compliance and a submission of the mandatory statements, the financial statements, the annual report, and the governance evaluation checklist. That's the minimum we expect from the weakest among in the sector, and of course, with the intention of supporting you so that you can strengthen. Right, the second precondition, charities that are well-governed. You will see that I bracketed conform and perform because governance has 2 phases. Governance has a conform side and a perform side. So the second precondition, charities that are well-governed, meaning you are already conforming, then we want to support you to reach your highest level of performance. We want to help you build capacity and capability, not just for the present, but for the future of your organization. The third one that is pointing to ourselves, the Charity Council is an advisory to the Commissioner of Charities. We also build enablers, and we promote our enablers so that you can apply them. Whatever we do are not academic exercise, right? We really do not have the time to do that. We want to do it such that you can apply them, right? So we believe that education and engagement and working in collaboration of all you partners, and so far I've had such positive experiences with all our partners. And the energy is what really keeps me going. And finally, precondition, a capable and well-equipped charities unit. And I hope they don't pull out their hair and their teeth in the next 3 years. And of course, that would be overseen by the commissioner. So essentially, our work plan from the last 3 years up to the end of the next 3 years is really to support this theory of change. Now, I mentioned that we have created many tools and frameworks and playbooks, and also introducing new frameworks, new training. And as I think about all this coming together, yeah, we've done what we need to build enablers, right? Any more would just be, a second or third dessert, and you just need one dessert, right? So we've got everything, and what I would like to share with you is this integrated approach to building trust. How can you as a charity use an integrated approach to building trust based on the enablers that we have created? We started with the lifecycle survey with Ernst & Young, right? And to me, that is very important because contextualizing the sector is so important. Among all of you here, there are startups, there are growth stage charities, there are charities that are matured and already making an impact on the social space. But there are also some of you that are stagnating. Although you may not say, there has to be, right? There will be some of you that are stagnating, looking for a reason to survive. And there are two paths. You either decline, meaning, okay, whatever we've set out to do, we've already achieved. Let's call it a day, right? And there are some of you say that, hey, but based on what we have done, we notice new poverties that are creeping up. So perhaps we should renew our mission. Whatever that is, yeah, that is part of governance, yeah, really understanding ultimately what is the mission you are set up to do and how you're going to renew that, right? So that's the life cycle survey, and we have created a diagnostic tools together with Ernst & Young, and in the first week of May, we will actually be sharing that with you. And you can use that tool to calibrate where you are, and based on the 6 factors that allow you to calibrate where you are, you will be able to see where your strengths and your gaps are. Yeah, and have matured conversations with the boards, with the committees, and with the management around those strengths and those gaps. All right, so watch out for that space, first week of May, the life cycle diagnostic tool. Something that we created very much earlier on is called the Shared Services and Partners Blueprint. You may not know this. We already announced this 3 years ago, right? And when I talked to many of you, you've really not heard this. So after today, 1,000 plus of you who is listening to this speech will have no more excuse that you have not heard this. And I hope you spread it to 5 other people or 10, so that it really circulates to the whole sector. Because this is where foundationally, operationally, you can refer to more than 100 frameworks, playbooks, whatever these are all the tools that are already in the charity portal. We have more than 100 of them, and we are not going to produce any more unless really, really necessary, right? Shared Services Blueprint, so we have 11 shared services partners, and we have many, many, many more partners that are not shared services that have come to help us. And in the next 3 years, we want to reach out to more partners so we can engage and do more outreach to you at the ground level, right? So refer to the Shared Services Blueprint. It's on the charity portal. Govern Well, Commissioner has spoken about it. It is for BCM, board members, committee members, and the management team, right? I have completed the Ishka module. I burned all my weekends just doing, I don't know how many modules there are, 15 modules, right? And I've given them feedback, yeah, because on how they can align with the council's thinking in presenting financial stewardship. Out of the 7 modules from Pro Bono SG, I've done 4 modules because the 5th module, hasn't come on yet. The 6th and 7th module, I feel a bit of conflict because I'm supposed to reveal what my charity is not good at. So maybe I won't do that, yeah, but that's a really good exercise. I will be attending the Impact measurement done by the Majority Trust. I've been enrolled in July for the 2-day course in July. And the SID as good, which has been running for the last 7 to 8 years, I've already attended that 7 or 8 years ago, right? And I hear it's going on strong. So again, board members, committee members, management team, sign up for that. Commissioner said that there are 800 plus of you that have signed up. I remember 3 years ago, I did a poll, and I said if we were to mandate a training for board members, how many of you would support? There were 1,000 over attendees. 83% say you will support. Yeah. So I did the sum. Okay, maybe 83%, 830 turn up for this course, right? Okay. So now we have to reach out for those who were not around that day. Yeah. And we are aiming to hit 2,000 a year. So please help us to do that. Otherwise, the work that we'll do will really amount to nothing, right? If only 3 to 5% of you are actually convinced by it. And commitment isn't about saying, yes, it's a good cause. It's really about putting your time to do it. Yeah, otherwise, it's just lip service, right? So again, please sign on to Govern Well, not for me, not for my council, but for yourself, for your organization, for your beneficiaries. Pillar framework, something I think will be a game changer for the sector. Yes, a lot of hard work for you. We've received feedback from many of you, oh, why make it so difficult? Yes, change is never easy, right? Have you heard about change that is easy? That a change that results in moving the needle, that's never easy. And this is what it is, the Pillar Award. It's something that will move the needle for the sector because we are not just doing governance for governance sake. We are doing governance to build the highest level of public trust, right? That's the ultimate that we are reaching for. That's the pinnacle. And this framework hopefully will guide us towards that. At the same time, this framework is a self-learning tool. Whatever you can't respond to in the framework, there are notes and guides and signposts for where you can find the answers to the questions. And what we're going to do today also, there are sector administrators on my council, and I know they're all very busy also rolling out what we're rolling out for the sector. Yeah, and for the next 3 years, it's time for the sector administrators to work with us, yeah, so that we can also streamline the best of breed from each of the sector into our shared services blueprint, okay? So hopefully you will see a shared services blueprint that consists the best of everything, that you can pick and choose depending on where you are in the stage of your life cycle. Now, I use the word integrated. It's because we produce the enablers, you apply the enablers, and ultimately it has to lead somewhere. The public has to say, yeah, all these enablers work, and the good practices also result in a certain level of public trust, right? So there has to be a public recognition event for that. And when I try to put some words into what the long-term impact is, it just means that charities now become pillars of trust. I will explain why we use the word pillar later on. The highest level of achievement in the field of governance using the framework would be pillars of trust, and Commissioner earlier said, trust is not claimed, it's cultivated. You need to work towards trust. Yeah, it's not something you achieve overnight. Now, beneath that pillar of trust, we are looking at charities to be beacons of governance. Yeah, charities will excel in every of the alphabet PILLAR, right? And at the very foundational level, we would expect charities to be champions of transparencies. It is my wish that as many charities as possible participate in the Pillar Awards, right? It's not about winning an award at the end of the day. It's about you participating in the process and calibrating where you are at this point in time in the PILLAR, which is mapped to the Code of Governance. So in that sense, it's a feedback tool which will illuminate you on the real status that's going on within your organization. And if you have that open and positive attitude towards learning, this would be the best place to participate in. A very quick sneak peek into the shared services blueprint for charities. It's already on the charity portal. I'd like to introduce a few common languages. I'm not sure how to use the laser here. Right, so within organizations, the value of the organization, your charity, is measured on the capital that you have. Right, so we are introducing terms for what sort of capital you should be building. Is it financial capital, human capital, social capital? Something that usually charity leaders put at the end, at the back of their heads without actually deliberately working on growing your social capital. There's legal and intellectual capital, physical, reputational, digital, organizational, and leadership. So learn to use this kind of languages. Yeah, so your charity move towards being a professional organization that has value. Value beyond just doing the work, right? So at the council level, we have recognized this capital, this 9 capital for charities to build on, and mapped it against the 6 principles of the code. Yeah, and you can see here there's a table, right? And what we're trying to do is to populate all the cells within this Excel spreadsheet. So as shared services partners, they are the ones that contribute to the green parts. Our other partners are the ones who contributed to the green parts. My last check with the charity portal, there's about 100 plus frameworks and tools already here. Yeah. So you can imagine, we have given you options even within the cells, right? So it's a very, very rich place to go for your resources. And I urge you to do that. Now, what we're trying to do is to get the sector administrators also to contribute their tools and frameworks that is relevant for their whole sector, not just for their own subsector. At the same time, we also notice, based on the feedback, that the human resource, the human capital within our charities are quite weak at the moment, right? So we are going to be working on a few HR frameworks and tools so that you can embark on strengthening your human capital. Govern well, I don't have to say anymore because Commissioner has said it, and I also repeated why we must attend this. I have attended it. Why not you, right? So these are more details on when the next runs are, how much it costs. To summarize, it's 79 hours for all the modules, and you have 3 years to finish it. 3 years. It's highly subsidized, and when I do the maths, it's about $10 an hour. And you are accessing the experts for $10 an hour, right? So please do sign up for Govern Well. If you have signed up, thank you so much. We have other plans for you to help you grow your leadership. If you haven't, again, tell 5 to 10 people to come because we do want to have at least 2,000 people signing up for these events. Yeah, then we know that in the next 3 to 5 years, the needle can change. Yeah, in the area of leadership and governance. The pillar framework, if you want to know what pillar stands for, it is actually the 6 principles of the code. Yeah, so we are really having a very integrated approach to the way we do things, right? So P stands for purpose-driven mission. I is for integrity and ethics. L is for leadership and governance. The other L is for long-term planning. A is for accountability, and R is for reputation and communication. So if you want to know how you're doing in these 6 areas, apply for the Pillar Awards that is starting this June all the way to October. Put yourself through that experience of answering the questions. Yes, some of the questions you may really scratch your head and say, how am I going to answer this? Click on the help screen and the signpost will be there. All right, so we're doing as much as possible to guide you in a very intuitive way. And of course, we welcome our feedback, yeah, if things are not happening the way Commissioner and I conceptualize them to be. I just wanted to share very, very quickly the Ernst & Young preliminary findings. Based on me reading the report and where are some of the unique characteristics of each of the subsector. So we've got the 8 subsectors, but I would really like to just go through in broad brush 4 of the sectors because we don't have time today. Right, so for example, the arts and heritage. If you look at the life cycle, they are at the turnaround stage, yeah. So most of them are reviewing what they should do in that space. Yeah, there are key characteristics, strengths, key risk, strategic focus. I'm not going to go through line by line because we are going to meet you on the ground, right? And we want to have a dialogue with you. And this is what I will share with the subsector. How many of you are from arts and heritage? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. There's some representation. The sector administrators have seen this and say, yeah, in general, it does represent where the subsector is. All right? The education sector, maturity, right? If you are board on the education sector, you will know how tight the compliance is, right? So they are at a maturity state. How many of you are from the education sector? Okay, yeah, bigger than the arts. Religious sector. How many of you are coming from the religious sector? Okay, yeah, about the same size as the education sector. I really wonder where the rest are from, right? Okay, yeah, right. And social and welfare is at a growth to early maturity, right? Yeah, and if you look at the strengths and the risks, I can really relate to that because I'm also on the social sector. So how many of you are from the social sector? Okay, a lot of you are from the social sector, yep. So we're not going to spend time digesting all this. It's just to let you know that the life cycle, it's just beyond that diagnostic tool. It's really giving us the colors and the shades and the tones of the subsectors so that we can have meaningful dialogues with you when we make our way to see you. Right, so looking ahead, this is what our work plan looks like, right? In the area of strong compliance and submissions, Commissioner has shared the numbers who are currently complying and the work that we're doing to amend the Charities Act. I have talked about the shared services blueprint, and ultimately at the back end, many, many years from now, when I'm no longer on the council, I do like to see the pillar framework being the single point of information input for all the charities to measure governance, right? So that we don't have too many places that we go to enter our data. The second thing, building capacity and capability for the present and future of charities. We will continue to work with our shared services partners. Currently, we have 12 collaborative partners. We also have set up the Temasek Shop House, which is you can turn up at Temasek Shop House. Of course, you make your appointment first, and you work with the shared services partners on your governance issues. They have nice, beautiful room, and there's even a nice cafe with good coffee, right? So you can attend there. It's a pleasant experience. And we want to expand the list of partners. Why? Because in the next 3 years, we are going to embark on pilots, right? I talk about going upstream for many of you, and one of the best ways to go upstream is to start implementing some pilots, right? So under the Charities Capability Fund, we are now working on the pilots, and then we will have some intel on whether we can wrap these pilots into the Charities Capability Fund, for which we are budgeting for next year. Right? One of the pilot programs would be the lifecycle S-curve transformation. I don't know what to call it now, so I'm just stating it as it is. I know that there are many high-impact charities that are moving up the S-curve, from startups to growth, from growth to maturity, and from maturity to renewing, right? If you're on the decline and you want to close down, no, we are not going to help you to close down, right? We're not going to make our funds put to closing you down, but we want you to be able to transform. Now, this implies a different set of partners. It's really going into business modeling thinking, right? And we want to work with a few charities, with a few partners to put together a program on how charities can scale. As far as streaming is concerned, we already have the 5 training partners for Govern Well. Thank you very much. We will expand our training partners depending on the needs of each year, right? And because our world is so dynamic, there will be new needs. I mentioned earlier we would be piloting a mentoring program for HR leads, and it is also my wish to be able to have the mentoring program for boards and for management. And this is where, if you have attended Govern Well, we would like to mentor you, right? But we're still at stage 0 of that, so I have no details. Don't ask me about it afterwards. No details yet. We have to come to the table and start planning. And I really would like to introduce the servant leadership model for the whole sector. Now, the education and engagement, we will continue to have our, what I call continuing and ongoing education. The Pillar Awards will commence next year, although the preparation and the application starts this year. For the Financial Capital Series, we have a few weeks ago piloted a program for small charities, almost startups to growth stage charities, working together with a partner called AVPN, whereby they bring together the private bankers, sitting down with the charities, work for more than an hour, create a narrative, and then stage 2, stage 3 will be where they fine-tune their governance, and ultimately they may be sitting in front of a high net worth individual or organization, right? So that's also one of the pilot programs that we have started. For the digital capital enhancement, we're now thinking work with the sector administrators would be the best strategy for us, because our SAs have been very, very active in pushing the technology pathways, right? So if we can, with especially the smaller charities, create a pilot for technology upgrade, that could be another one, right? To end off, while you're still thinking about whether you're a house of straw or stick or bricks, I just want to emphasize, a house is only as strong as the people who live in it. We call it a home, right? And a sector is only as trusted as the foundation we lay together. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goh, for the strategic update and for outlining the exciting path ahead for the Council. Welcome back, everyone. It is now time for our highlight segment, a dialogue on supporting charities at every stage. I would like to invite our moderator to the stage, Ms. Chai Chen-Ning, Deputy CEO of Pro Bono SG. Joining her on the panel are Mr. Desmond Chin, Commissioner of Charities, and Ms. Theresa Goh, Chairperson of the Charity Council. A reminder to all our participants today, you can submit your questions via Pigeonhole. The panelists will be addressing them during the panel discussion or at the Q&A segment. Over to you, Chen-Ning.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, friends and colleagues from the charity sector. I'm Cheng Ying from Pro Bono SG, and I'm very happy to be with you here today. While all of you were having your breaks and chit-chatting, I was busy looking at Pigeonhole. There are many, many questions, some with 20 votes and 17 votes right now. So I'm very happy to be your voice to ask these very difficult questions, and I'm glad that I'm not the ones answering them. So maybe we'll just kickstart with some of the top questions that we see coming in through Pigeonhole, mainly grouped around financial sustainability and a topic that all conferences cannot escape now, which is AI adoption. You can't have a conference unless you've talked about AI. So the first question on financial sustainability touches on how, Commissioner, you talked about the rising costs of manpower, rising costs of running a charity, and also tighter manpower at the same time. And you also, at the same time, asked us to consider how to diversify income sources. So considering the cost of fundraising and also softer donations, our charity friends have asked, given rising costs and softer donations, is the 30-70 fundraising ratio still a fair measure for IPCs? Or can it be reviewed with wider context?
This is not the first time I've heard this question from about 3-4 years ago. I visited a few charities, and this question on the 30-70 rule has come up. I must tell you that I think from a donor's perspective, it will be difficult to donate to you if I know that you spend more than 30% of my donation paying for the cost of fundraising. That was what I mentioned to the charities that have asked me several years ago. I had recently also heard about this, so I think I thought about it, and I think it will be the same, because every time I look at the donations, donors always ask that 100% of their donations would like to go to the beneficiary and not to supporting the charity's costs, which means that you then have to find another way of doing so. This is not a very good start to the first question, but anyway, the sad answer is I don't think it will pass the donor's test. That's my frank opinion. So which means that we then have to find another way of raising funds in a more cost-effective manner. So don't do your traditional methods that will cost you an arm and a leg, like a gala dinner, and have expensive MCs come on stage to do that. You need to get your volunteers to do so. You may have to adjust the way in which fundraising is done in a more cost-effective manner.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will also ask Madam Chair to add to that. But I can empathize with these 40 people that have voted for this question. Because right now, fundraising is not so simple, We also need to communicate the impact, but first we must measure the impact, then we must come up with a TOC, then must have frameworks and indicators. We must have people analyzing the effectiveness of our programs before we can even translate that into a fundraising effort. And then we need the relationship manager to steward the donors and so on. So maybe with that in mind, Madam Chair, what do you think about this question?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because at my last council meeting, we were talking about this. Yeah, so the presence of third-party fundraisers who are actually not real fundraisers, but investment companies, really do irk me a lot. It's an opportunity, a group of opportunistic people whom we must not encourage. Right, but it's very tempting. You get easy money, you pay away 30%, you still get that 70%. Right? Then the question raised by council members were, why do we have this 30-70? Why not 50-50? Then another council member say, why not 10-90? Right? So, it's a very polarizing topic. Yeah, so while 40 or 14 of you really want to see that 30% lowering down, I'm sure there's another 40 to say there's no need, right? Because they have managed to find an effective way to fundraise. So based on my experience with that pilot project, I talk about the small charities working with AVPN. I found out something very, very interesting. The perspectives are very different. So one of the key points was that the charities are now actually encouraged not to go to the donors directly because there's this long process of building trust. And everything you've mentioned, it's really about the process of building trust. Work with intermediaries because the trust is already built. So if the charities work with the private bankers who have been serving the high net worth individuals for many, many years, they already have that trust currency. So why not the charities work with intermediaries? And apparently this is it's a trend, yeah? It's already happening in many parts of the world where the intermediaries actually come in to be that trust ambassador for the donors. So that's something I learned. Another thing I learned was there's an AI tool, I think it was a real post, whereby, after that roundtable conversations between the charities and the bankers, whereby many questions were asked, the AI generated that narrative, a 10-page narrative, within a few minutes. Yeah, and based on that narrative, the charities could look through, refine it, and the bankers could look at it and say, yeah, this is where the hot buttons are for our donors. This is where maybe it's not relevant. And you have that narrative. So the trust is there, the narrative is there. Hopefully, there is some meeting of minds and movement of money, right? So there are new ways of doing things, which even I myself didn't know, but because I attended that session, I found out, yeah, which is why I encourage all of you, renew your minds, yeah, whatever we know has changed. So it's good for you to find new ways of doing things.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So other than, sticking to the old models, which might be very cost-heavy, we should also look at new ways of doing things and diversifying our fundraising income. On the topic of diversifying fundraising income, there's a lot of curiosity over family offices because we have all been told that there are 2,000 of them in Singapore, but where are they? Commissioner, there have been some questions posed in the pigeonhole on whether, you can help to compile a list of them for us. And to this, Madam Chair will, again, I think, reiterate the use of intermediaries. But over to you, Commissioner.
The last time I checked my job description, it says I'm the Commissioner of Charities. I'm not MAS. Okay, so the family officers come under MAS, all right? So they have a list of that, family officers, obviously, right? Now, whether or not that can be shared, I'm not too sure, right? I have to check in with MAS as to whether that is permissible, because there's privacy requirements and all that. But remember, you are attending a COC event, not an MAS event.
Okay, so the list remains elusive for now.
I'm sure if you go to SID, they may be able to tell you which at least part of the family officers, because they do a lot of work with family officers, right, SID? Yeah.
Okay, we all know where to head to during the break. Yeah. Table 21.
And even ComChairs has tapped quite successfully into family officers. And the pilots that I'm doing, I do want to tap into family officers as well. So ask me this question a year later, I might be able to give you the list. Yeah.
Thank you. And another way of diversifying fundraising income, which was brought up in the pigeonhole, is about how charities maybe can adopt social enterprise initiatives or fee-paying model arrangements. But there are also some concerns on how charities can support such innovation without drifting from their mission. So I was wondering if Commissioner and Madam Chair, you would like to add to this.
I can share that because I was the chair of Satacom Health, and it is a social enterprise. Which decided to apply for charity status. Yeah, so one very important thing that the board needs to know and decide upon is what drives what. Does the social enterprise drive the charity, or does the charity drive the social enterprise? To me, that's the first path of clarity. And believe me, I took about 4 board meetings before the board decided, yes, the charity drives the social enterprise. And thereafter, it becomes very clear. How much reserves do we have? How much do you want to take out for the humanitarian fund? Yeah, and when would we start to incorporate two separate companies? Yeah, so there's a short-term as well as a long-term view to it, right? Because if both the social enterprise and the charity grows, then it makes good sense to form two boards and have two separate companies. So right in day one itself, you need to have that long-term aspiration. But in the meantime, a humanitarian fund that is separated from the operational fund will actually already segregate the two. So there's no mission drift, the board is clear, the charity drives the social enterprise, then every other decisions will be made based on that clarity.
And Commissioner, the specific question is also how you view the shift from charities diversifying to fee-based services. So what are your views on this change in service delivery model?
Actually, I don't think that it's a major problem of having a fee-based model, because I've seen many charities running its programs and services and charging a fee. I mean, for example, my mom attends Dementia Singapore and programs, and they charge a fee, and we think it's reasonable, and you pay for it, and it's their source of income, right? So I've seen some of the financial reports of some of our charities. I noticed those who do very well are those who are very diversified. So they have, obviously they have grants, then they have, fortunately or unfortunately, the grants make up a large portion, but I have my own personal views on getting grants. If you become too dependent on the grant, then I think you're putting yourself at the mercy of the grant giver. So to me personally, if I were to run a charity, grant is important, but I would not be wholly dependent on it. Second one, I noticed they run programs and services. Some of them 10, 20%, 30% of their income is from running programs and services, and I don't think there's any problem with that. The third one is investment incomes, and I think that in the recent couple of years, I think is doing quite well, but before in COVID years it was bad. So they diversify, they get grants, they get fees, they have investment incomes. I noticed that those who do it tend to be able to wade through crisis a lot better than those who don't.
Yeah, in fact, I am a supporter of charities generating revenue. I would call it revenue because income can be grants and other things. And in fact, in the SATA model, whatever we were doing for the charity, like screening, free screening for elderly and migrant workers, before the government came in to give the subvention due to the COVID situation, we also package all this screening into the private sector, right? So I've actually been advising many charities, whatever you are providing in terms of a service that is relevant to the private sector, why not market it to the private sector, yeah? Make it one of their 3 quotes, yeah? Maybe they will get 2 quotes from other private sector and 1 quote from a charity. And it's for them to decide who they want to pick, right? So logically that works, and it has worked before with the social enterprises that are charities. So why not? Unless you don't have the resource to fulfill both, right? Then you need to ramp up first, yeah? Of course, it takes a business model. It's a change in business model. It's not something you decide tomorrow, we're going to knock on corporate and ask them to buy our service. It's a change in business model, yeah, which is why I talked about that transformation pilot that I'm planning to do, right? If the right partner comes along, it's rethinking your business model. I think that is what is sustainable. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Madam Chair. And now I am going to move to the most exciting question of the entire day, because it has 54 votes. And surprisingly, you know, it's on GST. So charities end up paying a lot of GST. Expenses to deliver programs have GST, grants, but grants given excludes GST. So we run into this usual reality of, you know, the funding gap, and how we have to then fundraise to fund this gap. So the question is, can government allow charities to claim back the GST? What do you think, Commissioner?
The last time I checked, I'm also not from IRAS. No. Having said that, to the 55 votes, I think it is a valid question, right? But my short answer is, I do not own this GST policy, but we will need to go back and, if we have a use case, we can build a case for it, then we can go back to IRAS and have a discussion on that, which we will, all right? What? I don't know why you are clapping. I didn't.
Because we see hope.
I didn't make any promises. I say we will discuss. We will have to go back and discuss and see whether this is something that the tax collector is okay with it.
But we clap already. That means akan datang. Just joking, I'm just joking. Don't get me into trouble also. But now 57 votes already, Commissioner. Theresa, would you like to add to this point, or should we move on to a different?
I think it's a good question, right? So there is a process. Yeah, I've been talking about downstream, midstream, upstream, right? Some of you have already seen my slides on that. So if we want to go upstream for the policy maker, and then they have to go to Parliament probably to talk about it, it's a long process. So while you're clapping, yeah, be prepared to wait. Yeah, I've learned that we need to wait, yeah, before something becomes policy. But it is a good question. Having come from charities that have to pay GST, and our GST has grown, right? So that quantum now increases. So, yeah, good question.
Yeah, supported by 74 people now, just saying.
No, it's proof.
Okay, and just wrapping up this section on financial sustainability, we just wanted to ask, we've talked a lot about the importance of financial resilience, but when we really explore the relationship between governance and fundraising performance, do you really see that connection, where better governance translates into better fundraising performance, and vice versa, when there's very poor governance practices, but people don't stop giving because the cause is compelling or it's something very close to their hearts?
Okay, so your question is, does governance equal increase in fundraising, right? I would say not always, which is why ever since I stepped on the platform 3 years ago, I've been talking about this thing called public trust. Does governance lead to public trust? Because it's the public trust that brings you the resources, not governance directly to the resources. So public trust is very important. I know it's esoteric, but it is really about the kind of relationships that you build with all your stakeholders, not just the donors. But in the area of fundraising, of course, the donor experience is very important, right? So remember, there's this thing called public trust between governance and whatever resources, whether it's fundraising, volunteer resources, or any other resources that will benefit the charities.
I'd just like to add to what Theresa has said. Actually, I look at it on the other opposite side, which means that if you have very poor governance and it coincides with that being made public, I can almost guarantee you that your donations will drop to zero, right? Because no member of the public in a sane mind will want to give you money when they know you're very poor accounting, there are some dubious things that are happening in your charity. But so I think you need to have that. But what I would imagine I can see that's coming, if not already here, is that if you want your fundraising to increase, then donors look for just a couple of very important things. One, they want to know what you are going to do with the money that they give you, which then means you need to be able to explain what you do that will make a difference in the life of people that they want to sponsor. So, which means that you have to demonstrate outcome, impact, and everything that Ching Ying said was difficult to do earlier on. But it is true, you cannot run away from that. You cannot delay anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. You cannot delay anymore. I've been saying the same thing for 6 years, but I think you cannot delay anymore. The profile of the public is changing. Social media 6 years ago compared to social media today is much more powerful. You do what you muttered in your sleep will be known tomorrow in the newspaper, right? But so how you run your charity has to be run well, because you must always expect, all it takes is just one disgruntled staff or one very unhappy employee because whom you didn't mentor very well or whom you had to dismiss for whatever reasons, will go out to the social media and paint you in a very poor light. We have seen complaints like this, all right? So we have to look at it and realize, hey, actually this employee is not, it's not really well, It's not very well. I mean, I'm not saying mentally not well, no, but it's just cannot get along with people, and therefore the charity had no choice but to dismiss the person. But the person went to town and really ruined the reputation of that charity. So you need to understand that these things can happen. You need to run a tight ship, whether you like it or not, but you need to be ready for it. And in order to get your funds and your donors to support you, they need to know how effective you have been. That we cannot run away from that. That's all I'm trying to explain. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. And on the topic of public trust and public perception, I wanted to ask, because actually the people that are not compliant are in the minority. You had mentioned that only like 14, okay, sorry, to you it's not only 14. This 14% of people that are not filing their submissions on time might face strengthened enforcement efforts, right? You made the announcement just now. And I assume that with these strengthened enforcement efforts, there will also be a heightened public awareness of such bad practices within the charity sector. So how does that affect public trust in the rest of us? It's 86%, very complying, very conforming people who come for conversations. And, signing up for Govern Well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I would do is I will put on my website, if I'm a charity, that I complied. I'm not the 14%, right? So just, well, you're right. I mean, I think human beings are very, if you see one bad news today, then you think it's bad. You see two bad news in a row, you think the world is coming to an end. Yeah. But I think it's important that we do, for those 14%, okay, let me dissect it a little further. Among the 14%, not all 14% have bad intentions, right? I must tell you, the majority of the 14% are quite clueless, because when we communicate with them, first, you cannot find who they are, because they never update their address. Number two, if we do find out who they are, then they said, but I didn't know I was the charity board member. Yeah. Then some will give you, well, the one that really blew me off my feet said, am I a charity? No. So they may be clueless, but they don't have evil intentions. So we need to dissect those, all right? So once we can sort out this group, then that leaves us with a much smaller group to deal with. Look, the intention of the COC is not, as I said in the speech, it is not to go, I don't take pleasure in punishing people, all right? Please, this is not our intention. Our intention is to have a trusted charity sector. You comply, fine, good. But you cross the line of criminality, then I can't help you, right? Because that becomes a police case. But if you are prepared to go and make amends, go and do up all your annual submissions from 5 years ago and sort it out within a certain reasonable period of time, I think that is something that will be useful. So this will be the way in which we are heading at this point in time. But we need some enforcement levers for the very bad cases. So I hope that it will only be limited to the very bad cases, which I think shouldn't be too many. And I think the public can understand who are really deserving and who are not.
From my perspective as a behavioral analyst, I believe in the Pareto principle. Whatever you do, 80% will support and 20% will not support. Right. And actually, come to think of it, the 86 versus 14% actually, supports this rule, right? And what I'm trying to say is, based on what Commissioner has said, out of that 14%, perhaps only half or less than half may have misaligned intent. Yeah, and if we use a very, very targeted approach, we will get them, right, while the act is being changed. But at the end of the day, if it does go to the media because Commissioner took enforcement, the Pareto principle will still come in. Right? 80% will say, great, Commissioner is doing something for recalcitrant charities, so our trust goes up. And that 20% will say, oh, yeah, it means there are, bad boys and bad girls on the charities. We no longer want to trust. Yeah. But there's the 80% that will trust, right? Because we're doing the right thing. So we believe we are doing the right thing. Yes.
Anyway, in case you're curious, what is the maximum penalty? $10,000 fine, 3 years, or both? It's supposed to be comforting.
On that comforting note, I will move on to the next topic that is keeping a lot of us up at night, which is technology adoption, because there are 62 votes on the next question as well. So, Commissioner, in your opening speech, you shared that technology can help charities do more with less. Now, all of us can imagine how that will happen, but the reality is, before we get there, first we need to do digital needs assessment, then we need to do vendor evaluation, then we got to navigate all these data security, where people holding your data issues, then we got to do procurement. After you clear your IT committee, you clear your board, then you got to apply for a grant, because actually you cannot afford the Rolls Royce that you're shopping for. And then afterwards, you got to train your people how to use the tools, because you went through so much trouble to get them, and then they're not optimizing it. So many people nodding their heads here. And then after that, you do the change management, you haven't seen the results, then it's time to report the KPIs for the grant on how automation has made your life easier. So that's my very long-winded way of saying that, before technology can help us do more with less, it's actually, we have to do a lot more first. So the question for Commissioner and the Charity, Madam Chair as well, for the Charity Council, is how you can support, this AI adoption, whether it's through shared services, on approach on cybersecurity, adoption of tools in terms of implementation costs, guides, playbooks on AI adoption. So, yes.
Well, in fact, the funding is already there under the Charities Capability Fund. And again, the Council, we sat together to review the details of the funding. And there were 2 words we added, digitization and AI, right? And the rest we kept because it's already applicable. Infrastructure, laptops, devices, consulting services, training, it's all already part of the CCF funding, right? So it's nothing new, but we have added in the AI and the digitization as input for next year's funding. So the answer to the question is not whether we will consider, is whether you will actually apply for the grants. Yeah, so the supply is there, but we're not seeing the demand.
Madam Chair, as someone that has applied for the grants are very helpful, but if you don't have the in-house competency, not saying that Pro Bono actually don't have, we're very competent. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have the in-house competency to do all these things, you don't even know, I mean, it can be a pre-scope solution, but pre-scope solution, then got 100 options, right? So how do you choose between, so there are still some gaps, sure, even with the support of all the grants, which we're
And this is what happens when you have a lawyer as a moderator, right? So all the soft competencies and skills, this is where you need your volunteer strategy. You need volunteers to augment, and you need to be trained on how to manage volunteers. So if you put this together, you do have an integrated approach. Now, NCSS has done well in that sense because their funding covers not only the design and the solutioning, they also have a funding for an IT headcount. They also have a funding for volunteer management, right? So the council is now working with the sector administrator to say, perhaps some of this thinking we can also bring to the entire charity sector. Like even with funds to support a head count on an 80-20 basis, and that percentage drops, right? Because at the end of 3 years, we do expect the charities to start to be able to fund their own head count. The charities are saying, oh, then we can't apply for the funds. Yeah, because you're not supporting us forever, right? So the volunteer strategy now becomes very important. Yeah, how do you bring all these consultancy skills, the hand-holding skills, the writing of paper skills? That has to be part of your volunteer strategy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, do you have anything to add on this AI piece?
Some years ago, when we were talking about board composition, I did mention that the board composition needs to be diverse, right? And the reason is very simple. No charity can be good at everything at the same time. So your board needs to have people with different abilities and talents. So for example, if I were to set up a board, I will definitely look for a lawyer, right? Let's demonstrate over here. I'll look for a lawyer, because the lawyer will help me in my all sorts of legal woes that I might get myself into. Then I will also look for accountants, because the accountants will help me settle my financial statements. In fact, I'll look for 2 accountants and 2 lawyers, in case one is indisposed, then I at least have another one. Then I will look for someone who's very good at social media, because that's the way I need to communicate my impact. And of course, I will look for someone who is very good at technology, with AI and so on and so forth. And perhaps I'll also look for 2. So you have to supplement yourself by looking for board members and volunteers, as Theresa said, in order to help you to do and navigate some of these very confusing things, especially if you're a non-tech person like me. Now, so that is how I would try and structure my charity in order to do that. But it is true, and I can empathize with you, that there is certainly difficult. I was just telling Cheng Ying the other day that when I was a scrawny 15-year-old, I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I went to the gym, and then there was a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger. But then there's a quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger that says, "No pain, no gain." That's a bit like technology adoption now. You will go through initial pain, and the biggest pain really comes from within. First and foremost is within your own people, right? Who say, why are we doing this? Number 2, are you looking to sack us, right? With technology adoption, are you going to remove me because it's part of your manpower cut? And so on and so forth. So we need to understand. So the biggest challenge you have is not just funding. If you manage to get the fund, you need expertise. Then you have the fund and expertise. Your biggest challenge really is changing the mindset of your people and having them redeployed, if the technology is fully implemented, to do things that can complement the technology that you're doing in line with the objectives of your charity. So that is how we need to look at it. But this, as I said, you cannot run away from that anymore. This is the other area that is here to stay. And the faster we go through this, the better we will prepare ourselves for our future. Yeah, so if there's anything to sum up, it is really no pain, no gain.
Yeah. And on the topic of AI, I just want to emphasize very much that I mentioned there were 2 words, digitizing and AI. There was a 3rd word, actually, it's ethics. Very, very important. I'm a big user of AI, and sometimes I am concerned about the ethics behind it. I worry about the questions I ask, where it goes to, and how they actually are gaslighting me, right? So we do need to be the better of the AI, and that requires training. You need to go for training, and you need to get your hands dirty when using AI.
I feel that this is an appropriate time for me to exercise my moderator's privilege to sell some goyok for Pro Bono SG. So we do have an ethics course, and Madam Chair just said ethics is so important. Because we all suffer from decision fatigue, and we have to make so many decisions in our daily life. And our ethics course actually provides an ethical decision framework on how to make good choices to improve our sense of responsibility and sense of discernment and judgment. Okay, advertisement over. So moving on to another question on AI, which also has to do with ethics, is how do we use AI for good, you know? Especially in this room, how can AI be used to strengthen a person-centered approach in our services while ensuring that human dignity, choice, and relationships remain at the heart of care? So, Madam Chair, I think this very much also relates to your questions on responsible and ethical AI use.
I think this is where, when you collaborate and get together with other charities, and the Govern Well platform actually allows you to meet other charities. You're not just listening to theory, they actually bring charities together to share their best practices. So, for example, SOS, right? They are in the suicide prevention, that's their core mission. They've started to use AI, right? And in the background to listen to, of course, with all the ethics and the consent being in place, to listen to conversations, and they do get thousands of conversations. Right? You can't get a counselor to sit there 24 hours and be totally 100% present. But the AI is able to pick up tones, phrases, words used, pauses in the telephone conversation, and highlight to the counselors that, hey, these are cases that requires a different kind of attention from your normal calls. So that, to me, is a very good example of how AI is incorporated into the service delivery process. Yeah. So if you look at the whole service delivery process, there are many things that happen also, right? Volunteer management, volunteer alignment, speaking the same language. All this can be monitored in the AI systems if you have automated the whole service delivery process. Yeah. So these are just nuggets, but you can really learn a lot more by interacting with the charities themselves. And while talking to the charities, I also, my eyes open, wow, this can be done, that can be done. Well, it's really amazing, yes.
Thank you, Theresa. On the other hand, though, it feels very counterintuitive to have AI take over such a human-centric role of understanding emotions and distress and even, interpreting our pauses and tone. So, Commissioner, do you have anything to add to the point of how AI can be harnessed to improve person-centric care?
I think I don't know, my personal experience with the AI tools are actually quite positive. So if I don't know anything of a topic, I'll go and ask it and it will tell me certain things. But you're right, at the end of the day, in a counseling setting or in some kind of human service organization, I don't think it can be applied 100% without a human in between or intervention, a human being part of that final decision making. So a very simple thing, right? So for example, sometimes when I don't know what I want to say at a certain thing, I'll ask, I'll put it into ChatGPT or something to ask, what is it I think my audience will be interested to listen to? So then the AI will write a speech for me to tell me, you might want to consider saying these things. But when I look at it, I say, no. I don't think 1 and 2 may work, 3, 4, and 5 will not work. Then I will change that. So I think similarly, I guess what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, the person in the middle needs to decide what goes in and what goes out, even with the use of AI tool, and even more so in a counseling setting. I think the other issue that comes when I hear a lot of anxiety about AI and so on and so forth is, will it replace me? I'm not sure if that is something that your staff may be thinking about when you are trying to introduce such tools. So I was just talking with the team yesterday that actually there's a very simple rule in life, with or without AI. As long as you are relevant and useful to your bosses, I think it's very hard to replace you, right? With or without AI. Yeah. So if you want to stay on in your job, assuming you want to stay on, then the best thing is you must make sure that you add value to your organization, and your boss, unless the fellow is crazy or mad, will then remove you, especially if you are relevant to the organization and you're helpful to whatever he or she is trying to do. So I think with or without AI, the key for us is we need to always be ahead of the curve. We need to always be able to think 2 levels up. We need to always be able to anticipate what is on the horizon, take proactive steps, address issues, problems that are coming, whether in your charities or in whatever organizations you're working at. Then your boss will say, yeah, you're my good and faithful servant. I will not replace you, with or without AI.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying that SOS uses the AI for their counseling. They are using AI for their hotline, meaning any of you can call in, right? And the AI is, to some extent, being able to pick up, somebody who is at risk. Even one life counts, right? We're not talking numbers here. If right at the beginning of the process, you can already screen out, I think that is very helpful.
So definitely a lot of human judgment required as well into deciding what to use AI for, maybe for more simple routine tasks and so on. So my moderator outline was generated by Copilot, my good friend. So Commissioner, I'm very sorry, all the difficult questions came from Copilot, not from me. To sum up the aspirations that are AI related, before we move on to the next topic, I think people are hoping for a shared service approach for cybersecurity, given that AI can potentially cause a lot of risks as well for the charity. There are also some aspirations or hopes for guides, tools, and playbooks to support safe adoption and governance of responsible use of AI. And of course, very hard to do work without money. So can the technology grants be increased proportionately with the size of the charity as costs scale, for example, with the number of subscriptions? So
we are certainly looking at tiering the funding based on the size of the charities. Of course, the main question is, should we give big charities more or should we give small charities more, right? It doesn't always mean that you're a big charity, you get more funds, right? So we are really having critical thinking into the kind of service and what sort of tiering should we give to the small and the big charities. I think it's important for us to be discerning as to where the fund goes. Some big charities have a lot of reserves, and why are we funding them? Especially in the area of the transformation funding, we are talking quite big numbers here. So the debate is still ongoing within the council, how we should tier the funding according to the size, or maybe even the life cycle of the charity may make more sense. And considering that our life cycle diagnostics is now a self-report, meaning you enter in the data and you know what life cycle you are, that can also be manipulated. So many considerations that we are looking at now, but certainly we will fund the use of AI in a bigger way. Now, NCSS again has actually, the IT division of NCSS has actually looked at how AI can augment the service delivery, and they have even gone down to identifying which tech vendors to help the charities in what areas of their automation. So the sector administrator for MSF, which is NCSS, is on my council, and I've asked Shunya to actually share with us some of those findings and extend it to the rest of the sector. So that you can also approach the same vendors, to automate your service delivery.
And if I can make a pitch again, in case those of you who didn't hear me say earlier, we sent out a CCF survey form, remember? Yes. Can you please fill up that form, tell us what you need, and some of these suggestions that you may have, then we can incorporate that into our feedback when we go for the next tranche of requests for money. Please.
Just don't ask for the latest version of your iPhone, I mean, your Apple computers.
So no pain, no gain. We will fill out this survey. And now we will also move on to the next topic, which is on collaboration. So there is a question. So collaboration and partnerships are a recurring theme, and charities are often encouraged to drive more impactful cross-sector initiatives. And there was also a topic that was voted just now on, how we need to reduce duplication of services, and should we be looking at consolidation for greater economies of scale. So I guess also depends on how the gatekeeping is happening, to not have so much duplication. But also, what can charities do in this aspect? Do you, in fact, encourage more consolidation?
Well, collaboration is a word that comes with a lot of assumptions. Yeah, I know when we say collaborate, we expect you to start collaborating straight away. It's not. It's a messy business. Yeah, and I think I'm qualified to say that because I actually teach a course in SUSS. It's called Leadership for Collective Impact. Yeah, and really it goes through, the baseline for your collaboration to actually produce positive outcomes. Yeah, when we talk about getting people to collaborate, there must be a shared agenda. And that in itself is already very challenging. Yeah, because all of you are driven by your own agenda. Coming together to create that shared agenda can be very frustrating if the personalities at that table are not open to change. Have you worked with people who are really very, very rigid, not adaptable, and everything you say they have something to counter? It really drains out the energy for collaboration. So one of the things that I would advise is when you want to collaborate, be conscious of the personalities that you are collaborating with. Yeah, it will really save you a lot of headache later. And of course, after the shared agenda is agreed upon, you will have to agree on what the work plan looks like. Yeah. And this work plan is over and above your day job, right? So it's really going to stretch the level of commitment. Yeah, and without trust around the table, that level of commitment is what I call very fragile. Yeah. So to what extent does the activities include building trust? I'm talking about deep trust. And once you get there, how do you continue to sustain the commitment to the process? Now, the reason why you come together is because it is not a simple problem to solve. If it's a simple problem, you can do it yourself. Right? It's because the problem is complicated, it's complex, it actually transfers many types of charities to come together, so that commitment over a long period of time needs to be sustained. Yeah. So yes, you're right, Cheng Ying, to say that, collaboration is in itself a complicated process. And I even go so far to say that collaboration comes with a set of skills. Yeah. And if we can professionalize that set of skills, it will be wonderful, right? So if Skills Future can say, oh, we have collaborist competency frameworks, I think that may make sense, because if the whole of Singapore is going to collaborate, how are we going to collaborate well without the skills and only the intent? Yep. So that's my respond to you.
Yes, thank you for talking about this messy middle, right? Because most of the time we're just told collaboration very good, partnerships very good, let's not duplicate services. But the reality is that it's often a lot of work to ensure that there's alignment of vision, that there's an equal contribution of efforts and resources, and scope of responsibilities as well. So now that we know, Commissioner, that collaboration actually is not so easy, do you still, want to encourage these consolidations, and are there really economies of scale? Sounds very troublesome.
So I must tell you that, remember I used to work in my previous job. In the previous job, we know that the way to send out a message of second chances and whatever we are trying to do, and having employers employ ex-offenders and all, cannot be done by the prison service alone, right? There's only 2,400 prison officers. So a brilliant commissioner then decided he needed a care network. So he had partners with NCSS and various other entities that came on board. So I think there were about 10 of them, right? All the people who were doing work together. And they were bound by one vision. And that vision really was to bring down recidivism rate and to have people reintegrated back to society. So for collaboration to work, number one, we need to have a common vision. If no common vision, don't even start. Okay? Don't forget all about it. The second thing, you need people who are of like mind. to work with you. Number 3, it cannot be what is in it for me. It must also be what is in it for him or them who collaborate with you. So you need to understand what is it they want out of it and whether that partnership or collaboration works. So that collaboration on the prison side of the house has grown to more than 100 partners by the time I left, which was 2020. I'm quite sure that number has increased. Just now I was speaking and I was telling you about the partnerships that COC's office have. So when I came to this office, there were only 22 of us. How is it possible for us to be able to reach out to the charity sector with resources, tools, and so on and so forth with 22 people? You can, but it's not very impactful and not very meaningful. So the very brilliant officers before my time decided partnership and collaboration is the way to go, and I explained that earlier on, and I will not repeat. I don't think I need to repeat myself, but it is true. It's the same thing. Do we have a common vision? We have. What is it? Build a trusted charity sector. Do we have we do have interests that can be met on both sides? Yeah, of course we have. My interest is to make sure the charity sector has resources. The partner who's helping us, their interest is to make sure that they can contribute, whether it's through their CSR efforts, whether it's to help them in their own business practices. Actually, I don't really bother, as long as it's not unethical and as long as it ends up achieving both our common objectives of having the charity sector gain from that partnership. If I were a charity sector doing something like that, and I'm a very small charity, this is how I would think. What can I do? Not just what can I gain, but what can my partner gain, and how do we go about doing it? And my advice then is to start small first. When it succeeds and trust is built up, as Theresa said, then you go on a bigger scale. Thanks.
So again, no pain, no gain.
No risk,
no risk, no gain. So we'll now move on to the next topic, which is, I think, more on leadership, HR, and organizational culture. So, but before we go there, Theresa, just now you mentioned, a house is only as strong as the people who live in it. And you also mentioned that there will be an increased focus on HR governance and tools. What are the kind of deficits or the gaps that you're seeing right now that need to be plugged?
I think if we look back a few years ago, there wasn't a board member with HR experience on many charity boards. But I think that number has increased. We now have more HR representation on the boards. And then if you cascade down the organization, many of you cannot afford to have a head of HR. Right, so you are counting on the HR experience of your board and your management team. So that there's no targeted approach towards HR. And HR is so important because it actually drives, the culture, it drives the culture, the mindsets and values of the whole organization. Yeah, from boards all the way down to the lowest operational staff. And because charities have been really chasing the money and chasing the audit, rightly so, we realize that they've been blindsided on the charity side, or on the HR side. So there was one point in time when the attrition rate was quite high, right? And the funds all rush in to kind of patch the gap. Right, so now we have to start looking at HR and how to make sure workers in the charity sector are well developed, they have benefits. Yes, salary is still below what we all like to be paid, yes, but the advocacy is moving in. And not only that, we're also looking at teams. Teams, how can they work more effectively? And I mentioned HR alone, when we introduce a mentoring project, HR leads being mentored is not alone. It has to be in conjunction with, let's say, the C-level as well as a board member, all coming together. I see it as a triangle of effectiveness, right? You have the board member being mentored, you have a senior management team being mentored, and you have the head of HR being mentored, right? And I'm also looking at mentoring, being very targeted for the 14% of the people who are visible or not visible to the Commissioner of Charities, whereby it becomes a hands-on approach. Yeah, not just listening to you for 2 hours every month, but rather sitting next to the person and say, how do we get down to actually, filling up the forms and, submitting the mandatory requirements. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that brings us to the next question. And with less than 5 minutes left on this dialogue, this might very well be the last question. How can an organization recover from bad HR practices if there's new leadership that is brought in, there's been a change in the team dynamics, and a toxic environment has been created? In such a case where we're trying to reverse bad HR practices or bad leadership practices, like, what can we do about it? Commissioner, would you like to take this question?
Is your question with regard to a badly run organization with HR practices that are not quite there, and then you are now trying to right the ship?
I think the question suggests that there has been a new leader at the top. They have brought in a new teams that maybe has kind of changed the culture, and there's now a toxic environment based on the question that has been asked. So maybe we can frame it as, if already there are some HR practices that the rest of the team feel are not good, or leadership changes that have been made that we have to live with, what can we do about it?
Maybe I'll just share a personal experience. In 2020, I came onto this job. So at my farewell lunch, my old permanent secretary told me, there are 2 things you must never do when you go over to MCCY. I said, what is that? Number 1, you should never say, when I was in the prison service. I said, okay. And number 2, say, do nothing for the first 100 days. So I understood that because when I joined MCCY or the COC's office, it was in the middle of COVID. I went there and there was nobody in the office at all because everybody was working from home at that time. But it's true. Nobody, when you go into a new organization, don't make a comparison with the old organization you're from, because in their minds they'll think that you don't understand us. Where you come from is different from where we are, and it's true. Number 2, you shouldn't say anything that denigrates the predecessor. That was another good piece of advice that an ex-boss once told me. Don't ever denigrate anybody. Number 1, it's wrong. Number 2, if you do that, then that's a very stupid thing to do because it's wrong. It's wrong. Whatever it is what it is, and you just work with it. So I think if you do go into an organization that's quite toxic, the first thing that needs to be done really is to sit down with the entire group and really have some honest conversations. You need to understand what has happened. You need to understand where the anxieties and worries are, and then address those squarely. You may not have the answers, the full set of answers, but at least I think the staff appreciate the fact that you are actually trying to do something positive for it. I'm saying this and assuming that the person is not the problem himself.
Toxicity is a very complex issue. Yeah. My advice would be, if change is needed and you don't have the power, you have to learn to lean on the power of others. This is a very real case, right? Where if top-down is creating the toxicity and bottom-up is at the receiving end of the toxicity, there is a power distance. Yeah, and to say, you can do this, sometimes it's just not possible. Yeah, so lean on the power of the ecosystem. But you need a lot of courage. Yeah, who can you talk to? There are whistleblowing policies in place. be brave. I always worry for whistleblowers because it can actually blow, but you need to be brave if that toxicity is proven to be done with intent. So you got to be very, very clear what is causing the toxicity. Yeah. And if you can't do it within the power of your organization, borrow the power from other agencies. That's all I can say for now, right?
Thank you for sharing that, Madam Chair. So with that, we are at time. So I'm just going to deal with two very quick administrative questions. One is there's a lot of interest in the Pillar Awards, and just confirmation being sought from the audience as to whether the Pillar Awards will replace the Charity Transparency and Charity Governance Award.
Yes, it would be.
Okay, so seems like there'll be a lot of competition given the level, the number of votes for this question. And next, we also confirm that the slides will be shared with participants after the event. With that, I thank everyone for a really engaging session. It was very fun for me, maybe not so much for them. But I had a good time. Thank you, and let's keep chatting after.
Thank you for being a speaker as well.
Thank you, Cherning, Commissioner, and Ms. Goh for the engaging and candid dialogue. It is clear that collaboration remains the key to strengthening the impact of our sector. We hope you have found today's In Conversation with the Commissioner of Charities and Charity Council 2026 useful. Before we conclude, a few final notes. For our online audience, a survey will pop up on your browser once the webinar ends. For those here in person, please scan the QR code on the screen. Your feedback is important to us. Networking lunch is now served outside the ballroom. We encourage you to continue the conversations over meal. With that, on behalf of the Office of the Commissioner of Charities, the Charity Council, Pro Bono SG, and the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Centre, thank you for joining us and have a great lunch.